Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to be finishing off our climbing mechanism. So I can come up to this here climbing wall and I can go right up to it and I can grab and I can actually just scale the whole thing if I don't hit the microphone too heavily. Here we go. I'm scaling, I'm scaling, I'm scaling. And if I look down at any point, oh, I'm up off the ground. That's quite cool. So basically what we're going to have to do here is to make sure there is a way for one controller to steal the grip from the other controller. That's going to be one of our challenges. And we're also going to have to disable the gravity of the character movement component. Here I am all the way at the top. That's pretty cool. That's the first time I've managed to do that. So we're going to have to disable gravity from the character movement component, and I'll be showing you how to do both of those things in this lecture. So let's dive right in. Ooh, I'm standing in the middle of thin air. Pretty cool. So at the end of the last lecture, I challenged you to essentially set up your own, very own climbing wall. And that's what we're going to do in this lecture. So it's a bit funny that these things are floating out here in the ether. So I'm going to move our handholds up against the wall as a starting point. So there we go, it's up against the wall. Now you may notice that we've got a blocking volume here that will stop us from being able to move into it. So I want to see if I can move this blocking volume back just a smidge so that we can get up closer to that wall. Let's just see if that's done the trick now. Oops. Does look like I have selected the wrong thing. There's our blocking volume. That seems about right. So now we should be able to get up to the wall. Let's try that out. I'm going to walk right up to the wall, and if I can activate my controller, then we should be able to... Where is my controller? Here's my controller. And oops, nope, it's not liking that. Maybe it's because I'm going out of tracking range. Could be. Yes, there you go. Now I'm getting my controller buzz, which is what we want. And it's well within range, and then we can basically climb up this wall. So that's what we want. Now I'm going to make it possible to climb up the wall by putting these handholds all the way up. So copying and pasting them, putting them at a sensible distance. Let's try that out, check that that's indeed a sensible distance. So for this I actually need to put my headset on and try it out. So I'm going to go right up to the handholds, grab one. Oops, I'm accidentally teleporting, grab one. Then I should be able to grab another, and oops, something weird happened, but they're definitely at a fairly decent distance. Okay, so I'll take that off. There we go. And then we can go back into the editor. And I'm going to just basically copy that pattern and put it all the way up the wall. Now you can do something much more creative than I'm doing here, but I'm just going to copy this pattern as far up as we possibly can get it. Like so. Something like this. Now I'm doing this through the wall. Let's just go a little bit higher. See how high we can go. Something like that. So that last one is now out of bounds. So we could try and delete it, but it's probably not hurting anyone. Okay, got rid of it. So we can climb all the way up to the top of the wall using our handholds, hopefully. And if you go and try and do this, let's see if I can do this without putting the headset on so that I can still talk to you guys properly. This is always the problem when you've got a microphone and a headset. They do not go very well together, unfortunately. Okay, let's see if I can do this. This is going to be quite tricky. Let's see, I'll hold it here and maybe try and grab out. Oh, this is not, you cannot see the contortions that I'm having to do here in order to make this happen. Oh no, this is very, very tricky. Let me put it on then. Okie doke. So I have the headset on and I'm going to climb, reach up and climb. Oh, reach up and climb. Ah. But strange stuff is happening. Whenever I reach up and climb, it's going, my screen's going black and then I'm dropping back down. So, what on earth is going wrong here? Why are we dropping back down? Now, I did a little bit of research into this, and it looks like the main reason is that our blinkers are coming on. And why would our blinkers be coming on? It's because our velocity, if you check and log out the velocity, you can try this for yourself, pause the video and have a go. By the way, we've been creating a climbing wall, that's what we've been doing. I forgot to update that bar at the bottom. So we've been creating a climbing wall, and when we start to climb up, everything goes black. Why does it go black? Well, that is because our velocity is being set, and that is because we're off the ground and trying to move ourselves off the ground, and gravity is trying to pull us back down. So we need to disable that by setting the movement mode. In character components, you have such a thing as a movement mode. And here is the documentation for said movement mode. You have got a set movement mode, and it is an enum. And if we have a look at that enum, you can see there's a few of them. We've got none, walking, nav, walking, falling, swimming, flying, etc. And you can see that there are some points about this. If you're falling, you are under the effects of gravity. If you're walking along a surface. If you're flying, you're ignoring the effects of gravity. So when we're climbing, essentially the closest mode that we've got is this one of flying. So that's probably what we should be doing. So without further ado, let's have a look at that. What we want to do is when we start to grip, suddenly we're going into this climbing mode, and we want the movement mode of the character to become essentially flying. So we need to go and get hold of our character component. So we've done this before, but we've done it with pawn. So I'm going to copy the code we've got for pawn, bring it down to the grip code. And after we set the climbing start location, we're going to create a character, and we're going to cast a character from the attached parent. So if this is a character, let me rename the variable as well. Then what do we want to happen? Well, then we want to go ahead and get the characters, do character arrow, and we'll notice we don't have the header file, so I can grab the header file. It's currently in vrcharacter.h already, so we can just grab it from there. And it's just the gameplay framework character.h, game framework rather. And then we do arrow, and we can get the, I think it's the get character movement, which is the character movement component. And then we can do arrow on that. And again, we need our character movement component now. So how are we going to do that? I think we've got character movement component in vrcharacter CPP. So let's check that out. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So let's go and find it in the document. So it's U character movement component. We go all the way down to the bottom. And it's, again, game framework. We could have guessed it really, couldn't we? We go over to the C++ file near the top and include the movement component as well. Then what we're going to do is, when we start gripping with this movement component, we are going to call that function the set movement mode, like so. And it is an E movement mode enum, and we're going to set the mode to flying when we start gripping. But simultaneously, we have to set something back. So when we started gripping here, and we have set the mode to flying, but that means that if we let go, we're not going to fall. So what we need to do is when we release, we need to make sure that it was true. So we can say B is climbing. So basically we want to say if we start off as climbing, just exactly the same as we've been doing up here, except this time it was not climbing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set it to not climbing because we've released. And what we're going to do then is we are going to do this whole cast of the character thing and null checker the character. And then we're going to set the movement mode. Instead of move flying, we're going to set it to falling so the gravity basically resumes and takes effect again. Okay, so let's build this and give it another shot over in the editor. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And, oh, there's my headset hitting you. I'm very sorry. My apologies, sincere apologies. So we're going to try and move over to the wall. And we are going to try and come up to the edge of it and try and move ourselves up. Like so. Oops. Something else is happening here. So it's not blacking out in the same way, but we do have a different problem going on here. And the different problem is that when we're gripping with the second controller, we aren't wanting to release the first one, right? We want to grip this and then grip the second one. And when we grip the second one, we want that essentially to take over gripping, because what's happening at the moment is that they can't both be gripping at the same time, or, well, essentially only one of them can really be updating the position. So when we let go, we end up just falling back down to earth, which is no good. So we need to have a way of getting these controllers to communicate with one another. And the way I'm going to do this is make sure that they have a pointer to one another. So we're going to do this by we've got our set hand method. We're going to have another setup method in here, which is going to be void pair controller. And it's going to take a reference to another a hand controller pointer. And I'm going to call this the other controller, like so. And then because it's going to be, well, it's not going to be that small, so I'm going to define it in the C++. And we're going to have a state variable in here. In fact, it's not really a state variable. It's more of it's not a default sub-object either. I'm just going to put it under state for now. I'm not sure where else to put it. So a hand controller pointer, which is going to be the other, or just, yeah, other controller, like so. And just to avoid ambiguity in our pair controller, I'm just going to call this controller, like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this when we set them up in our VR character CPP in begin play. We've set up the left controller and right controller. And then we want to make them know about each other. So it's going to be left controller, arrow, pair controller, right controller, like so. And this will mean that they then set each other as the other controller, so they can both communicate with the other controller. And then we're going to have to implement this in the C++. So our pair controller, copy that over, go to the C++, and I'll just stick it at the bottom to avoid having to think about where I'm going to put this. But do think about where you're going to put it. So I'm going to copy this a hand controller and make this into C++ friendly, basically. And so we want to set our other controller to be equal to this controller. But simultaneously, rather than call pair controller twice, what we can also do here is we can say that the other controller, arrow, control other controller. So our other controller's other controller is going to be us, basically. So it pairs, they both face each other, essentially, and we can do this with one call, which is nice and easy. So we could either have done this with the left controller paired with the right controller, or the right controller paired with the left controller. Eventually, they both end up with other controller being set to the other controller. Okay, so that was how we go ahead with pairing the controllers. Now, the next bit is going to be about stealing control. Let me go into more detail. So this is going to be your challenge to steal the climbing state. So basically what we want to happen is that only one controller at any given time should be able to climb. Now you could do this in a couple of ways. You could store some state on the VR character. I find that a little bit messy because then the VR character is involved with climbing, which is not really its responsibility. And given we've only got two controllers, it's very easy for them to coordinate between themselves. If we had 3 or 4 or 5 controllers, it's a different matter, but with only 2, it's quite simple. So we just pair them up in pairs. And what should happen on grab? How should you steal state? What happens on release? Do we have to do anything special? And basically, if you have implemented this steal climbing, you should be able to climb up that wall quite easily. So pause the video and give it a shot. Okay, welcome back. So I'm going to have a go now at stealing control. It should be fairly easy. So what's going on is when we start to grip, what we want to say, we want to check really, is whether the other controller has got climbing set or not. Well, in fact, we don't even have to check. All we want to do is make sure that our other controller does have it set to false. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go other controller, arrow, B is climbing, and set it to false. So that's just essentially stolen the state of climbing from the other controller. It will then in tick not be updating the position of the parent at all. In release, we don't have to do anything because we are the only person who can be climbing, because otherwise we would have had it stolen from us and it would already be false when we release, and in which case nothing is going to happen here. And is this going to work? Well, let's go ahead and build and try it out. If we build successfully, that is. So the build is indeed successful. Let's go ahead and hit play. And I'm going to attempt by stepping back a little bit. So it might be a little bit faint now as I'm speaking to you. I'm going to go up to the wall and I'm going to grab and grab. Oh, this is working. And grab. I shouldn't sound so surprised. After all, I am teaching you. Grab. And you can keep going all the way up the wall. No problems whatsoever. Oh, here we go. Getting near the top. No, we're not. Not quite yet. Let's have a look down. Oh, that's a long way down. This is quite fun, really. Let's keep going. Oh, no, I let go. And I fell all the way back down to the ground. So, congratulations. Hopefully you could hear what I was saying when I was a little bit further away from the microphone. So now that is you done. That is climbing complete. You're able to get all the way up to the top. It's not really an architectural visualization kind of feature, but you could certainly use this, and maybe you could even put climbing points all the way across so that you could go along the top of the roof and back down. Give it a try. Have a little fun play around. Congratulations, we have got climbing mechanism complete.